Yes, that is easy to clap for. Well, good morning. Good morning, Lynn Haven. Good to see you today. Good morning to you wherever you're watching. We are glad that you are with us today. We're kicking off a two-part series called Together Make a Difference. And I want to sort of begin today by sharing with you maybe my low point as a homeowner. Now, I know that it is well known that I am not very handy around the house, but this is my low, and I'm hoping by lowering the bar, we can all gather around today where eventually we're gonna go. Several years ago, it was winter and our furnace stopped working. And if you've ever had your furnace stop working in the middle of winter, you know that's a big deal. I got all these people who live in my house. My wife does not like to be cold. So what do? We call the repair guy, right? Whoever that was, we call the repair guy, comes in the house, timely manner, no problem. He walks in the garage and he says to me, "Oh, I see that you already turned off the emergency cutoff switch." The what? The what? Yeah, I see you turned off the emergency cutoff switch. That was a good idea. I said, I didn't know there was an emergency cutoff switch. He's like, "Oh yeah, and it's a little plate. It looks like this. This is a little emergency cutoff switch." And he flipped it back on, and sure enough, everything came back to life, and my furnace was fixed. And he said to me, yeah, well, there's no reason to clap, actually. He said to me, he said, "Well, I'm gonna take your $100, I'm sorry, so I'm gonna go ahead and check everything else anyway, just to make sure everything else is working," and shocker, it was. But he went ahead and flipped the switch, and then before he left, he put a big piece of tape over it, so that I'm like, well, I know now. I didn't know before. I know now. I don't need the big piece of tape. See, the thing is, though, there could have been things wrong with my furnace, right? I mean, there could have been something wrong. I've had other repairs happen where, hey, come fix this or that. In this case, though, it was just the emergency shut-off switch. This is where we had to sort of the baseline how to get started. And that's what I want to do today is I want to just give you like a baseline, bottom line, low-rung place to get started. I'm not going to solve anything for you today. We're not going to accomplish any huge life goals. We're going to talk about how we can just get started. And the reason I want to really lower the bar is that what we're going to get started on is actually massive. What we're actually going to get started on today is maybe the biggest thing in life. And some of you, when I introduce this question, are immediately going to have anxiety and stress and need to go back to the mental health series. But so I don't want you to do that. You don't have to have all the pressure. Our goal is to just sort of like flip that emergency shutoff on and sort of begin to make a difference. Here we go. Here's the question. Do you know your purpose in life? Do you know your purpose in life? Some of you do. And if you know your purpose, if you know your purpose in life, good for you. I'm so glad. I want that for you. If you don't know your purpose in life, if you're sitting here today and you think, do I know my purpose in life? And I mean like specifically, right? Like, do you know your purpose in life? If you don't, what I want to do today is begin to invite you on the journey of discovering a part of your purpose. See, I think one of the reasons we get overwhelmed with purpose is that we leave it so big and we think we have to know our macro purpose that is all times, all things, all places. And you can get there. Like if you really want to get there, you can do the work to go down that journey to discover that purpose. It is possible. And I'll even give you some steps today that the deeper you go in them, the bigger your purpose will get. But what I want us to see today is just a part of the story of how we discover our purpose. And to do that, we are going to look at the Old Testament character of Daniel. Daniel is a prophet in the Old Testament. Daniel in the Hebrew scriptures is kind of famous. You might be familiar with Daniel in the lion's den. That's a really popular story. We're going to be in Daniel chapter 1, and we're going to be introduced to Daniel for the first time. And I'm going to show you sort of how Daniel got where he got. So we'll take about maybe 7 verses of introduction. And then I want to look more specifically at his story today and to see how we can't be helped by Daniel's story to move towards understanding our purpose. So that's where we're going. Daniel chapter 1. What's up with this guy, Daniel? What can we really learn about him? We read that in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Okay, just stop right there. So at this time, Judah is all that's left of Israel. So these are the Israelites, the people of God. Jehoiakim's the king. It's the king's job to follow God and protect the nation. Well, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. So Jerusalem's a city, Babylon comes down from the north, and they build siege works all around the city so that no one can get in or out of Jerusalem, and they are there to conquer Jerusalem. Next verse. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles of the temple of God. Now pause right there. Why is this a big deal? In the ancient Near East, in the ancient Near East, everyone believed that when two nations went to war, it wasn't just the nation, it was the God of the nation. So it's the God of the Babylonians against the God of Israel, and the gods are in conflict. And so when Babylon won, they would have assumed that their God had conquered the God of Israel. But what Daniel tells us is that it was actually the Lord, God, the Lord of Israel, who delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. It wasn't that the gods of the Babylonians were greater than the gods of Israel. No. In fact, the point is that the God of Israel was disciplining his people. And so, the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. So Nebuchadnezzar, when he conquered a nation, he would go into their temple and he would take whatever artifacts that nation used to worship God. And so back in Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar had this huge room where he had all the artifacts from all the gods from all the other nations that he had conquered. And these he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put them in the treasure house of his God. That's what he did. As he continued, we read that then the king ordered Ashpenaz, and there's gonna be a lot of crazy names here, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility. Now, get your head wrapped around this, okay? This is a big deal. We are so tempted to romanticize people in the scriptures. Daniel is a young man living in Jerusalem when his entire world is rocked because a foreign army invades. He sees people starving, he sees people slaughtered, and he is taken like a captured prisoner of war from Judah up to Babylon. This young man, away from his family, away from everything he's ever known, away from his God, away from everything that's comfortable. He's taken because of his potential. See, what the king of Babylon would do, he would conquer a nation, and then he would find the best and the brightest of that nation. He would take them into his service, and he'd put them into his training program. We learn more about Daniel and his friends in the next verse. These were young men without any physical defect, the best of the best. Handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. So Daniel, who loved his mama and who loved his God, is now ripped away from everything he's ever known. And he's in a foreign land with a foreign ruler, and he's getting indoctrinated into the ways of Babylon. And here's what he had to learn. This was Ashpenaz, was to teach them the language and literature. They got to learn a whole new language. The language and the literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. So this would mean they're well taken care of, okay? So they're not prisoners of war that are suffering. These are prisoners of war invited into the inner circle so that they can become leaders in Babylon. And they were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. So, 3-year training program, 3-year internship, learn all the literature, learn the language, assimilate to Babylonian culture. Now, that's fine, except that to assimilate to the Babylonian culture would be to take on the gods of Babylon. And Daniel loved the God of Israel. We learn more about the people who were with Daniel. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. These are their Jewish names. So they're going to give them new names. And the new names they are given are these. The chief official gave them new names. He gives them Babylonian names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. You might have heard of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? So they get new Babylonian names. Now here's what I want us to see, and then we're gonna get to us, okay? That in about the 6th century or so BC, when Israel was conquered by the Babylonians, it was a war between two gods, but it was the God of Israel who was, in fact, giving over his people to be conquered because of their disobedience. That does not mean, however, that Daniel did not still want to be faithful to the God of Israel. Daniel still wanted to serve the God of Israel, and we are going to see a young man in a pagan land try to figure out what it means for him to stay faithful to his God all the while he's in captivity. Some of you are picking up on ways this can apply into your life right now, even as we're getting started. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself because he knew it was a spiritual issue with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. Now, this is very interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, there was no rule in Judaism. There was no law in the Hebrew scriptures against eating the food and wine that Daniel had been given. Daniel could eat whatever he wanted. He was free to eat whatever he wanted. So why does it say he was resolved not to defile himself? Well, what we can know is that Daniel was not going to do anything. He didn't want to do anything that would show him willingly submitting to the gods of Babylon. For Daniel, eating this food was to align with the gods of Babylon. Now, if you are a follower of Jesus, let's just take this out of the Old Testament context and drop it right here in 2023. If you are a follower of Jesus, and if you're not a follower of Jesus, you're here today, I'm so glad that you're here, and you're gonna be able to use this purpose stuff, and you're gonna be able to put it through your lens, and it can still be very helpful to you, as you'll see in just a moment. But I wanna talk to those of you who are Christians. If you are a Christian, when you think about discovering your purpose, when you think about what you are resolved to do, the question all of us, me included, have to ask first and most often is this question: am I resolved to love Jesus above all else? Because if you are a follower of Jesus and you have not settled this as first and highest and most, your purpose is going to end up somewhere you do not want it to be. And there are many of us, I would guess, who are actively involved in church, in groups, doing all the things, but in our hearts, are you resolved to love Jesus above all else? This is the first step in discovering your purpose. I want to build it out into a diagram like this. Here's the diagram. We're going to build this out today. We're going to start. You understand your purpose? The first thing we need to do to understand our purpose is be resolved. Resolved to follow Jesus. Be resolved. Our first passion, our desire. Now, if you would say, hey, Eric, I'm not so sure on the Jesus thing, then maybe you just go with passion. You figure out what you're passionate about. But we're not going to make any progress if we haven't resolved. And that's not something you do when you're 12. That's something we do and we redo and we do and we redo. We resolve to follow Jesus. Number one part of discovering your purpose. Just to start there. Are you resolved to love Jesus above all else? We could pray and go home. Even better, we could pray and give you 20 minutes to sit in silence and consider and see what the Spirit would say to you. But I prepared more, so we will go on. Verse 9. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. See, God's all over Daniel's story. Daniel's not getting anything he wants. He's been ripped from his family. He's living in a foreign land. God has not abandoned him. God caused the official to show favor. How did he cause him to show favor like this? But the official told Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. In other words, Daniel, if you don't eat the good food like everybody else, then you're not gonna be as healthy as everybody else, and I'm gonna get in trouble because the whole point of the 3-year training program is that you are the healthiest, brightest, strongest people that we conquered. So Daniel makes a deal with the official. Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, these are the 4 guys, says, please test your servants for 10 days, give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Now, pause. Don't focus on this as a diet. If you want to just eat vegetables and water, that's fine for you. Don't over-spiritualize it, okay? There's nothing wrong with eating the food that Daniel ate. It's just not the point of the story, okay? This is not a weight loss story. This is not a health story. This is a faithfulness to God story, all right? We get confused. Oh, Daniel ate vegetables. Maybe I should, yes, we should all eat more vegetables and drink more water. Duh. It's just not the point of the Bible, okay? So do that, but don't put God on it, all right? All right, don't make it like a spiritual thing. Okay, now what I do want you to see in this story, and I'm just making some observations here about the story. It's Daniel and his 3 buddies, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. These are their Jewish names, right? And it's interesting to me that as we look at this story, Daniel has his buddies as a part of the story. As we read throughout the book of Daniel, sometimes we just see Daniel, sometimes we see Daniel and other people, sometimes we just see these 3 guys. But there is this sense that these Jewish young men who were kidnapped out of Israel are sort of walking together. And I want to just encourage you, and we can talk later about how this breaks down or not, but I want you to think about the people that God has brought into your life. Because I think that a part of your purpose probably has to do with people in your life. If we're gonna build it out on the graphic, we'd build it out like this. We would say, okay, we're gonna start with resolve and resolve to love Jesus above all else. And then we're gonna say, okay, God, who have you given me influence with? What are key relationships in my life? Who are the people that are drawn to me? Who are the people that I love? Where does my heart break for certain people? We saw on the video a minute ago, the man who said that he loved holding babies or loved working with children or something. I'm like, that's amazing. I can't imagine. I'm so glad that God had put that in him. That's gonna be a part of his purpose over there. That's not mine. God made me afraid of small children, right? So I just know that's my level of influence, So when you're trying to figure out what's my purpose, okay, am I resolved to follow Jesus above all else? Okay, if you can't just like go past that one, you might be stuck there for a long time. But once you settle in your heart, okay, I'm actually a Christian. Like Jesus is really my king. I follow Jesus. I have a growing relationship with Jesus. Then I would love for you to just observe, not in a pressure-filled way, who do you have influence with? Who are you drawn to? Who do you care about? We're not all made the same. We don't all have the same passions. We don't all know the same people. Our hearts don't break for the same situations in life. So who wants to follow you? Who's interested in your ministry, your perspective? No pressure, just think about it. And as you think about it, those ideas that come up will help lead you towards your purpose. All right, we'll continue the story, see what happens with Daniel. So Daniel said, we'll make a deal. We'll just eat vegetables and water, and everybody else can eat the good food, and we'll see what happens. Daniel says, then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. Again, the point of the passage is not eat vegetables, drink water, be the best. The point of the passage is resist the food of the god of Babylon, dedicate yourself to following Jesus, and God will be faithful. It's not a food test, it's a faith test that Daniel is embarked on. Verse 15. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. God was faithful. So of course, they're like, all right, Daniel, I guess you can keep going. So at the next verse, so the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. And I don't know if Daniel's 3 buddies were like, yay, or if they were like all in, we don't know, but there was some, they were following Daniel. Clearly he was kind of the leader here. And then what we're going to see next as they do this is how God is still involved in Daniel's life. Verse 17. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. God gave them these abilities. God gave them these understandings. God gave Daniel this special ability to understand visions and dreams. My guess would be that God gave special abilities to the other boys as well. They're not listed, they don't come up in the story, but the point is that God is the one who's giving the abilities. God is the one who's given Daniel this ability to understand visions and dreams. This is what God was doing in Daniel. And that idea of God giving gifts flows from the Old Testament all the way through Jesus into the church. It's the third part of understanding your purpose in the graphic, okay? I'm resolved to follow Jesus. I look at around who have I been influenced with? What do I care about? And then what are my gifts and skills? Like, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? What are your gifts? What are your skills? What are you good at? That's gonna be a part of your purpose. I mean, there are a lot of us who want to be able to hold a microphone and sing beautifully, and you just can't. You're just not a good singer. It's not gonna be a part of your purpose, right? There are others of you, who would love to go and travel the world and bring the gospel to people in places, but you just, you get like intestinal issues every time you go to North Carolina. Like, you're not gonna make it to India. It's just not part of your gifts and skills. Like, we all have limits. We're all limited. So don't take all your time thinking like, I wish. No, just take some time getting to know yourself. Man, you're a student, you're a high school student, you're a college student, you're in your mid-20s. Get to know yourself. One of the best things you can do, how has God wired you? What fuels you? What's your passion? What are you good at? What comes easy to you? What do you raise your hand and volunteer for? That's how God made you. God gave you that. The pressure is when we try to live up or into something. No, lower the bar. Simply ask yourself, okay, God, what gifts and skills have you given me? Now, there are things we get better with over time. You really want to learn to play the guitar? We got a guy on our team who's a great singer, Ken, and Ken decided he wanted to learn to play the guitar, right? Well, 2 hours a day, Ken's playing the guitar. So maybe that's a passion in you. And that's a talent you'll develop. Sure, maybe that will happen. But stop looking around at what God gave someone else and say, God, what have you given me? How have you made me? He made you on purpose. I love, assessments and understanding self. I think it's so important. It's been so helpful to me personally. One that I love, just a free place to start. If you're looking for a free place to start, if you go to GraceBible.Church/serve, that's all you have to remember is /serve. We have this personality and gifts assessment. It's free there. It's a great place to start, especially in my opinion, the personality section, even more than the gifts assessment section. You can just sort of get started. Your gifts, your skills. Okay, let's continue on. Back to verse 18. At the end of time, set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. Dun, 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 dun. Here they are. Here's everybody. How's it going to go? It's 3 years later. Next verse. And the king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. They entered the king's service. He continues. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and all the enchanters in his whole kingdom. Why? Because God was giving them these abilities, and it ends like this, and don't miss the ending here. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus, which means nothing to you, but which everyone reading this would have known, and Daniel remained there for the rest of his life. Daniel remained there until he was 70 and died. Do not read the story of Daniel as a prescription to get what you want from God. Daniel, ripped from his home in captivity. Daniel, forced into a 3-year training program where he had to fight to remain faithful to God. Daniel, the rest of his life, 70 years. The nation of Babylon actually fell. They were conquered. Cyrus was a whole new king in town. Daniel remained. Did he ever get back? to Israel? He did not. Did he ever see the nation of Israel restored? He did not. But he served God faithfully through his life. It's the fourth part of your purpose. The fourth part of your purpose. What is your story? What are your experiences? What's your story? What are your experiences? Because it is very, very common. It is very common that we find our purpose flowing out of the most difficult part of our story. It's very common that we find our purpose in some of the experiences that if we could have chosen, we would have done it completely differently. Daniel didn't choose to get kidnapped. Daniel didn't want to leave his mom and his family. Daniel didn't want to get thrown in a lion's den. There's no way that kid wanted to eat only vegetables and drink water. Are you kidding me? But it's part of his story. What's your story? What's your story? Here's what we know. This isn't new with me. It's not going to be new to you, but it's just true. God never wastes a hurt. And God's never in a hurry. God never wastes a hurt. God's never in a hurry. And most of us have some years ahead of us, likely. So what are you going to do? Let's put the next graphic up. You want to know your purpose? Take time thinking, okay, am I resolved to follow Jesus? You got to come back to that one again and again and again and again. Okay. Then you can subset, okay, and what am I passionate about? What am I interested in? And again, if you're not a Christian, you can just start, what are you interested in? It'll lead you. Who has God given me? Passion, people, relationships. What are my gifts? What are my skills? What's my story, my experience? The Venn diagram helps us to land on the purpose. The middle of the diagram is where all of that overlaps. Okay, so how do we apply this for us today? Here's how I want to help you apply this for us today. Just one more theological big picture principle, and then we'll apply it specifically. Okay, in Daniel's day, God's people were a nation, okay? In Daniel's day, God had a specific people. They were the nation of Israel. Those were God's chosen people, right? Until they disobeyed, and then they got conquered by Babylon, and eventually they went back and rebuilt the temple, but it was never the same after that. And then 400, 500 years later, Jesus comes on the scene. And when Jesus comes on the scene, he comes to fulfill all the promises God had made to Israel, because God's heart had always been for all people, all the ethnos, all the nations, all the different people groups in the world. And when Jesus died and rose again, Jesus established his church. So God doesn't have there's no particular nation for God. There are God's people in almost every nation in the world. So in our day, God's people are the church. God's people are the church. And throughout the New Testament, as we learn about what God is doing through his church, we see that it's just the assumed part of being a Christian, that for every Christian, for every follower of Jesus, a part of your purpose is your connection to the body of Christ. A part of your purpose is God's people, the church. I'm going to say it like this, how it applies to us. Add it to the graphic here. That whatever your big macro purpose might be, a part of our purpose is to partner with the people of God. A part of your purpose is to partner with the people of God. Now, I'm not saying it's your whole purpose. Whoa, that's too much pressure. But I do know that if you're a follower of Jesus, a part of your purpose is to partner with the people of God. And I want to ask you, I want to encourage you today to think about what part of that purpose are you living out? What part of your purpose is God inviting you into now? Because we all want to make a difference. We all want to make a difference. And we all have different lives. And we all have different demands. And we all have different gifts and skills and opportunities. We all have all the different around the Venn diagram. It's not about everybody else. It's simply about you. It's about you. A part A part of your purpose, a part of our purpose is to partner with the people of God. And maybe for you, the low-hanging fruit to understand your macro purpose is to begin to move in this purpose. So I'll just give you a couple examples of how this works. So for me in the micro, not the macro, but in the micro, I'm resolved to follow Jesus. I'm doing my best to follow Jesus and committed to listening to what the Spirit says. I love teenagers. I love teenagers. Babies scare me. I love teenagers. And so I'm always looking for opportunities there. I have some gifts. I have some skills in facilitating small groups. That's something I've done. And in my story, in my experience, I'll tell you more stories another time, but I've had opportunity to do prison ministry in some pretty intense prisons in middle of Florida and up in Chicago. Prison ministry is a part of like my background. So I was praying since 2019. I was praying for I don't know, quite a while. God, I'm looking for an opportunity to get close to the poor, to get proximate to people in need. And this opportunity came up to serve with young men who were in the Norfolk Detention Center, in the juvenile detention center there. And so I go every other Wednesday to G-Pod at the Net Academy, the Norfolk Detention Center, and I run a little small group. Leadership skills, life skills, talking about listening and emotions, and just trying to encourage these guys as a micro part of my purpose. Is it like my whole purpose in life? No, it's not my whole purpose in life, but who I am, what I love, what God's given me, led me there. And when I walk away on cloud 9. Now, my guess is that many of you wouldn't make it through the door. You just think, you'd be like, no way, like I'm out. That's fine, that's not your purpose, right? We're starting a young adults group here in the next couple of months. You'll hear more about that if you're a young adult in your 20s-ish. We're gonna call it Common Ground, and Brittany Charette, our new connections director, is in charge of getting it off the ground. But Brittany asked her friend Amy Pound if she would help. Amy, would you help me launch this young adults group? Now, for those of you in Norfolk who know Amy, she is currently under her chair right now because there is nothing she would like less than attention, right? She does not like attention. But when you look at the diagram, you think about Amy, she's resolved to love Jesus. She wants to love Jesus. Amy actually works at Regent University in the athletic department there. She has a passion. She has relationships, influences with college-age students. She has 2 daughters who are going to be in college next year. She loves young adults in that season of life. Amy has administrative giftings and skills. Brittany's like, whoa, all the time. Amy's like, hey, how about we make a plan, right? So Amy, gifting skills. And she's about to be an empty nester. Her experience right now, she and her husband about to send their youngest kid to college next year. She's got more margin, right? And so I'm not saying it's Amy's whole purpose in her life, but a part of her purpose right now, partnering with the people of God, is to help launch this ministry, young adults, because we've known for years in our church that we need something for people in their 20s or early 30s, whatever, that young adult season to gather and to minister, right? It's not about the ministry, though. It's about Amy finding that purpose. My friend Mike Rollins, right? Mike helps lead the band with high school Gravity here at Lynn Haven campus, okay? And Mike is trying to love Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna follow Jesus. And he has teenagers, and he's great with teenagers, super engaging guy. He happens to be a great musician. They needed music, they needed the band. Through his story, which I'm not gonna go all into, it was an easy overlap for him to come and help lead music. And it's a part of his purpose. Is it his whole purpose in life? No. Is it a part of his purpose? Yes. We want you to find great fulfillment in who God has made you to serve and who God has made you to be and who God is leading you to care about. Now, 2 dangers, and then we'll close because I'm running out of time. 2 dangers. Here are two dangers to the whole thing, and then I'm going to give you a really clear application step. Danger number 1, you confuse doing for Jesus with loving Jesus. It is really easy to confuse doing things for Jesus with loving Jesus. The last thing we want is for any of us to live a life that the only time we think about Jesus is when we put on a colored t-shirt. That is not a win. We want a part of our purpose, partnering with the people of God to help us love Jesus. It's always gonna be a challenge. It's always gonna be a struggle. We're always gonna come back to it, but I want you to hear me say, please don't confuse doing for Jesus with loving Jesus and being loved by Jesus. And then the second danger, which you already know because you've been reading it, I should have had it come in second, that was dumb of me, is that you are comfortable attending church, but you're not connected to your purpose. There's a bunch of you today, you're comfortable attending church, but you're not connected to your purpose, but you're comfortable. So I want to help you take a step, and the way I'm gonna help you take a step is I'm gonna invite you to take out your phone. I'm gonna invite you to take out your phone. I take out your phone. Okay, I don't know how many text messages you got. We could have a competition later. Whoever got the most loses. You're gonna open your browser, or you're gonna scan the QR code, whatever you wanna do, depending on your age or whatever. You can scan the QR code, or you can go to Grace Bible. I'm going to GraceBible.Church /serve. You can scan the QR code if you want. You're gonna go there. And when you do that, you're gonna see where it says join a team. You're gonna go put on the URL, ready to make a difference. God wants to use you. Check out the opportunities. You're gonna click join a team. Don't worry, nothing bad is gonna happen to you, okay? We're not gonna force you, but I'd love for everyone to do this. If you're thinking to yourself, I'm already on a team, I don't wanna do this, just play along. It will help me, it'll help the people sitting around you. Like one person not doing it can ruin it for the whole row. Seriously. And if you came with someone today, probably one of you has their phone out and the other one's like, I'm not doing it. Don't be a dork, just do it. And mine's still loading. Good night, I hope it loads. Oh, it's still loading. Anybody else loaded? Oh, mine worked. Just loaded. Oh, good night. If there's anyone in IT who knows how to make the internet work, that would be great. Did anyone else, did it load? Yeah? Anyone it not load? Oh, hit refresh. Try again. Turn it off and turn it back on. Okay, here's what you're gonna see. You know your name, you know your email, you know your phone number. You know all that, right? Okay. You're gonna click a campus, and when you select a campus, you're gonna get a drop down, and the drop downs are similar, so pick the campus, pick where you're attending. If you are attending online, then I would encourage you to pick the campus you live closest to physically, and where do you wanna serve? We put kids and students first because we prioritize the next generation. And I wanna say to you, if you're not sure where to serve, I would encourage you to consider serving with kids and students. Not just because we have need, although we do have need, but because we value the next generation. We care about the young people coming behind us. And sometimes that's rocking babies, and sometimes it's chasing 3-year-olds, sometimes it's dancing or small groups with elementary school kids. And there are so many different ways you can serve with kids and students. If you click that button, you're gonna get New Logic, boom, all these opportunities. If you're not sure what to do, and you're not scared of children, I would check kids and students. If you are scared of them, but you like them, you can check it and do something behind the scenes. So guest services, that's blue shirts, hospitality, everything that's coffee, that's making things warm and friendly. If you love smiling at people, guest services is for you. If you think, I don't really like people, next gen, kids and students. Or music and production. We'll also take, in music and production, we'll take people who don't like people. You can run a camera. You can, we need drummers and bass players and singers and electric guitar players. Is there no one in this church who plays electric guitar? I don't understand. You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. I don't understand. There's nobody musical in our church? That's what it feels like. If you're out there and you are facilities, right? I just like cleaning stuff up behind the scenes. Great, check it. Safety, care ministry, you just have a heart, compassion, whatever. Think about your purpose, your passion, and then pick an area. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to that link. I want you to fill out that form, and I'm gonna ask you, even if you're already serving, that's okay. You can fill it out, you can let them know, because we wanna help you find your purpose. So, I am praying that when you refresh, that you could all get a hold of that woo-foo form. And what I want to do is give you about 90 seconds right now to do that. And then after that, I'm going to give you one more step, and then we will continue from there. So go ahead, take about 90 seconds, think about the form, and I will be right back. Okay. Thank you. I hope it worked. Thank you for those of you who are thinking about how God might invite you to partner with our local church. If you would like to talk to a human, if the internet did not work for you, if you have a question, if you have more information, if you're new to church and you're like, I don't know what any of this is, we have a hub at each campus. We have a hub at each campus in the lobby full of people who have been trained to answer all of your questions, and if they don't know the answer, they can find the answer. So if you're sitting here today and you're thinking, I'm not sure exactly, we have people who would love to talk with you. They're in black Together shirts. They have a QR code on the back so you can scan them and see what happens there, and they would love to connect with you. The hub at each campus. Hey, y'all, praying that you find your purpose, and thanks so much for being with us today. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.